I would sit down with people and they would be crying. What am I going to do? Please don't sue me. Please don't put me out of business.
Today's guest is Kevin, founder and CEO of Dry Powder, a fintech modernizing accounts receivable and cash flow for the construction supply industry, one of the largest and most overlooked parts of the economy. Through his work, he's helping businesses get paid faster and run smarter without forcing technology where it doesn't belong. Let's dive into his journey and explore the future of fintech and B2B payments.
Our number one focus is to care about our customers as if they're our problems. And we can figure out the other stuff later.
What did managing billions in receivables during that period teach you about cash flow and operational pain?
I want to use AI to make human beings more productive. I do not want to replace them. The very first question that I asked my guy who eventually became my alpha customer, what is the thing you'd pay the most money to fix? And it wasn't because I wanted their money. It was because it told me the thing that hurts the most.
Welcome to our show, Lead to Scale. This podcast is sponsored by Algo AI Partners. We help fintech services companies and businesses scale using smart AI solutions. If you want to book a free consultation to find out more, click the link in the description of the show below. Today, I'm joined by Kevin, founder and CEO of Dry Powder. Kevin has spent decades deep in finance and risk, managing billions in receivable, helping scale enterprise fintech platforms, and now applying that experience to one of the most overlooked yet mission-critical parts of the economy, the construction supply distribution. At Dry Powder, he's focused on modernizing AR and cash conversion for an industry that has historically been neglected and ignored by the mainstream fintech, without hype and without forcing technology where it doesn't belong. Kevin, for the listeners who may not know you yet, you bring such a unique perspective to this space. Could you introduce yourself in your own words? Who you are, what Dry Powder does, what problem you're most passionate about solving right now?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. My name is Kevin Ehinger. I founder and CEO of Dry Powder. I have a sort of a unique sort of perspective from my background. I've spent I like to say I have two hemispheres of my career. The first half, I was in sort of banking, credit, finance, risk management, ultimately spending most of it in the credit and ultimately as the treasurer of Do It Best Corp, which is one of the largest building material distributors in the United States and likely the world. Made the transition in 2014, became a customer of a brand new fintech company called C2FO at the time. I was the second customer on the platform. And kind of made the transition, got really, really into the idea of doing sort of the technology modernization within finance. And so I made the jump, actually joined C2FO, ultimately became the president of C2FO Capital Finance, was there for almost 8 years, exited that company at the end of 2021, and have had a few sort of tech stops in between. I got the bug about 2024. That I wanted to do something on my own and combine the two hemispheres of my career together. And it was one of those epiphany moments where I'd wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I went, oh my gosh, there it is. And it was all of these unique, because I'm a non-technical person. I'm pure play finance, through and through. And so while I learned a lot about what it takes to to build and scale and to run and operate a software company, I can't do any of it myself. So and I'm very, very open and honest about that. So it's a very big deal for me to have an amazing team of people around me, which of course I do. So it was a really, really exciting moment for me to be, oh my gosh, this is the epiphany. And the epiphany is, at C2FO, we were enterprise accounts payable for the Fortune 500, the Fortune 100, the largest companies in the world. And we scaled that company significantly, north of $1 billion in valuation, and obviously learned a lot from that process. But I kind of had this thought process going to say, I wish we could point something like this at people that are desperately in need of a solution. And what is that solution? What part of the finance world, is the first place to jump? Because I was very connected to essentially all of it in finance. And the epiphany connection was accounts receivable in the building materials industry. So I started thinking about all of my customers when I was in credit and the treasurer at Do It Best Corp. Started thinking about what it was like in 08 and 09 when the housing crisis made collecting receivables from contractors and construction companies very, very, very unique challenge. And how we, as a very large multi-billion-dollar organization, had the resources to buy or build tools to help us manage things. I was not yet in the headspace mentally to realize that we could have potentially built it in a way that we could have also offered it to our customers or to our members, what we called them at Do It Best. Um, and so that was really I went back and started looking and said, well, surely it's been a long time. It's been more than 10 years since I've been in that industry. Surely it's been modernized. Surely there's all these new things that help. And the ultimate reality is that unfortunately it hadn't happened. And I started talking to the people that I knew from my network back in the day and really started asking them questions. And I started with actually a really blunt question, which was, what is the thing you would pay the most money to fix? And I would talk to the owners or the CFOs, and I started hearing one after the other was accounts receivable, because they cannot find anything that integrates with the unique vertical ERP systems that dominate the space. So obviously I could go on for a long time, but that's ultimately the how we got here and why I started.
That's very cool. You shared sort of in a very few sentences. You shared quite a bit of history about who Kevin is, and so pardon me, I'm going to take the show a little bit to the beginning here. How did you first get into finance and risk?
Oh, I've been a math and finance nerd since I was. You could ask my wife and my family and my parents; they would say the same. All the way back to the very, very beginning. I mean, early childhood, and I actually made the decision, of course, when I was in college, trying to think about, well, what am I going to do that is like mathematical, analytical, because that's the way my brain works. And I made the decision to go into economics as my sort of direction of study, and I immediately fell in love with it because it was a combination of like technical science, meaning you could know how things work. There was predictability. You could calculate, which my brain likes. It explained things within reality, like in business, and so it just really, really, really clicked with me. My first job out of college, which is really, really interesting, I think, was a very entry level. And I was not particularly enthused about it at the time, but in hindsight, it was the best education I ever got. It was an entry level job as a credit analyst with a small bank in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I was fortunate that I got, because it was a small bank, my training was sitting next to the guy who's been the credit officer for like 40 years. And so I basically absorbed his brain and asked questions and really, really picked at things until I was like, oh my gosh, I totally understand all of this. I feel like I can help. I can add to people this way. And I got the bug that I didn't want to be a banker anymore. I wanted to help other companies do it for themselves. And so my first step was a random, like I'm in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and there's a multi-billion-dollar lumber and building material distributor that happens to be headquartered there. And they post a job for somebody looking to build and expand their, at the senior level, their credit department and launch a lending program. And I was like, wait a minute, that's me. And so that's how I got into Do It Best initially as a senior credit analyst. Worked my way through there. Was eventually named the treasurer, and everything from AR risk, credit risk. We did build a lending program there. Where I was responsible for like setting the criteria and making the decision and finding our funding partners and doing everything like that. And then, of course, all the risk associated with treasury stuff. So like bank relationships and accounts payable and everything in between. And as I made that transition to C2FO, it was it allowed me to turn that. So I have this like two schools of education where I was taught to be this technical credit bank analyst person. And then I learned what it was like to run it for a large organization myself. But in doing so, I got to observe all of our thousands of members and all of the pain that they dealt with and the struggles that they dealt with and the disconnected systems and all these other things that we couldn't do anything about. And so as I inch my way into technology, I just start thinking like, okay, now that I have these two master's degrees or whatever effectively in real life education, let me see if I can really understand how this software stuff works so that we could maybe turn it around and help people. And the original use case for C2FO, like our customers were the very, very largest companies in the world, literally the Fortune 5, the Fortune 100, everything. I'm not sure that I'm supposed to name them, so I won't. But the biggest companies in the world. Yes, our product benefited suppliers. It was an early payment platform. We processed tens of billions of dollars, and at this point, over $100 billion in early payments to the customers. So they absolutely saw value from the platform. But my thought was, well, what about the stuff that's not available in C2FO? What about the rest of their business? What about the general AR operations? What about like nothing that we did helped the small and mid-sized businesses actually manage and run their business? And I thought that was a unique opportunity. Like it wasn't like C2FO had a very, very, different use case. They provided the capital, like I said, to the billions and billions of dollars to small and mid-sized suppliers all over the world, literally all over the world. But I just wondered if there was a way to ramp it up and to have it be an even deeper relationship and help them with the entirety of running their business. And then I had all these ideas kicking around in my head as a finance leader thinking, okay, maybe we're going to tackle AR and payment automation, and then we're going to look at sort of accounts payable, bill pay automation, but tying the two things together, and then we're going to look at this, and then we're going to look at that. So that's how the idea of dry powder sort of came together.
Amazing. No, I love the fact that you took it back in terms of your university education and having that first round experience at that small bank. And oftentimes I feel like that's a very fair or common sort of observation by many who, when they start their journey, they're not necessarily enthused by those experiences that come around, but when they look back, they're very formative in what the trajectory looks like. And so, just to take a little fast forward a little bit. You were the global treasurer at Do It Best Corp. You experienced the housing crisis in 08, 09. I'm curious, what did managing billions in receivables during that period teach you about cash flow and operational pain?
Oh man, so cash flow and operational pain. It was and I'm going to expand the question to even further than that and talk about the impact on human
Of
beings.
course.
Okay, so the cash flow, like you cannot run a business if you don't know when you're going to get paid. You cannot, if you do not have predictable cash flow, you cannot adequately make decisions about the future of your company. You cannot plan forward and take advantage of unique opportunities. I'll use the opportunity to bring the name of my company together, Dry Powder. Why is it called Dry Powder? Because of the same reason that Warren Buffett mentioned dry powder. It's like we want businesses to have all the resources at their financial resources, but any resources at their disposal to give them the opportunity to take advantage of the next opportunity that comes their way. Maybe it's expanding locations, maybe it's buying a competitor, maybe it's adding a new product line. But if you have no control of your cash flow, you have no visibility to things, you're constantly cash poor because your customers are stretching you out, and then that opportunity comes your way, what are you going to do about it? Like it puts you in a position where you can't take advantage of opportunities that you should be able to take advantage of, um, and and we just saw that it absolutely didn't happen. And then the point that I was making about the human side of this, Do It Best is a co-op, so there's a different relationship between the customers, which is why we call them members, um, and to a traditional distributor sort of relationship. We were not tasked with putting our customers out of business to get our money back. We were tasked with keeping them in business without losing too much money, which is that's a very different. Like we wanted our 5,000 members to stay in business as much as possible, knowing that many of them were not going to make it because lumberyards lost as much as 50% in sales like almost overnight. Uh, and they have so much fixed costs related to large buildings and large operations, and these are human beings that are largely resistant to laying people off, which may come up later in this conversation, which I love. Like they're family operated businesses, in many cases multi generational family owned businesses. I would sit down with people and they would be crying. What am I going to do? Like, please don't sue me. Please don't put me out of business. I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. But here's what the plan's going to look like. We're going to talk it once a week. This is what we're going to do. I want you to send me a cash flow report. I want you to monitor your accounts receivables. And you're going to pay me $10,000 a week or whatever the number was on top of your regular purchases. And if you follow this plan, we keep shipping you product. And ultimately, not everybody made it. and that's an unfortunate reality of, I suppose, business in general. The economy crushed the industry, absolutely crushed the industry. And so there was some consolidation. Fortunately, underperforming stores, we were able to help them be acquired by higher performing stores so that people didn't lose their jobs and they didn't go out of business and all of that other stuff. But that was the first foray into my caring about the people you work with more than anything related to the financial component of the relationship. If you treat people, and this is, it shouldn't be, this shouldn't be like that crazy of a thing to say, and yet it is. And so we dig our heels in the ground and say our number one focus is to care about our customers and the problems that they're dealing with as if they're our problems. And we can figure out the other stuff later. Like we can optimize for revenue, we can optimize for cost, we can do all of that stuff over time. But our belief is, and I observed this in reality in Do It Best, was that if you treat people the way, like, sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes somebody owes you millions of dollars and they can't pay you back, and you have to do what you have to do to get as much of it back as you possibly can. But in the 80 or 90% of the situations that we were able to like help people work through it, they would never say a negative word about that company after that situation. They would never leave. They would never find a new supplier. They would never, they are completely tied to that organization because people cared about them staying in business. They cared about their employees. They cared about continuing to be able to supply products to the builders that are helping the families and everything in their community. And we've just taken the position that is going to be our most important thing. And not everybody likes that. And I'm not going to point at like who those people are, but it's a very different approach. And ultimately, I think it means that we develop trust very, very quickly. And just to sort of put a bow on it, I developed a very, very deep relationship as a result of that time period with a very, very large, like, I think they have 14 locations. And when I decided to build this or to launch this company and to build this, to build dry powder, the very first phone call I made was to this guy. I immediately realized that he took the phone call because of our relationship. He took the phone call because he remembered that we helped them. He took the phone call because I think we got each other and we respected each other. And even though there were times where, I need more, and I'm like, whatever, we got to make sure everything's okay. We ultimately got out of it. They're doing awesome, as I knew that they always would. And they became our alpha customer and design partner after 10 years last time I spoke to him.
Wow. I'm really moved by having the human first. And as I sort of hear you sort of share this, I think the thoughts that are coming to my mind is, man, if we were to just pause and you look at, within this industry of fintech or financial space, all this talk of technology and automation and streamlining and a lot of this, you counterbalance that with the fear of, they're going to come take my jobs and yada, yada, yada. Really what I start to hear is, yeah, you're right. It should not be absurd to say, because it should be obvious, but humans first. I mean, at the end of the day, if care is at the center of it, then that's the trust, that's the relationship, that's the fuel between businesses. And the way you put it and the way you stay true to this mantra, I think it inspired me a little bit. So I appreciate you sharing that. Really helpful. Now, so you later joined C2FO as one of their earlier customers. I want to sort of live that moment with you. 2 a.m., you jump out of bed, you're like, oh crap, this is that epiphany. This is that connect of one side of the hemisphere connecting with that. What happened along the way to transpire to get you to that point?
Well, I mean, I had left. I left C2FO at the end of 2021, and like I said, I joined a couple other companies sort of in the interim as like I was the head of Fintech for a software SaaS product that it was eventually acquired by HubSpot, and I was a co-founder of another company that we built a cool product, but I never really got off the ground from a fundraising perspective, and that was ultimately one of the things. So like I was, I spent a lot of time in the uh, supporting the fundraising efforts at C2FO through our time there, and so I was familiar with the process and have raised a bunch of money for fixed income type products and our lending products and stuff like that before, well into the billions of dollars across multiple products and capital types. And I just kind of saw it and like there uh, there is an opportunity here to do something that's very very unique, and I kind of realized that I needed to do it myself, and it was because of my experience at these kind of two companies in the interim. It was like we had cool ideas, we executed them, we had products, but either they weren't perfectly aligned with where I wanted to go or where they wanted to go in a different direction, which is entirely fine and reasonable. And so I just like I knew that I wanted to build finance products for what I would say is small and medium businesses, and it can scale up from that. Like there's but my heart is in helping these small and mid-sized businesses with for the reasons that I've sort of mentioned before. And it just became very clear to me very quickly that I wanted to do it myself. I knew that if I got it off the ground myself, I could point the thing in the direction that I wanted it to go. Not from an ego perspective in any way, but simply saying like, I have a really good vision of where this needs to go, and if I'm the one who starts it, then I can drive the bus. Not do everything myself, but I can drive the bus and take us in that direction. And so like I said, I did some time having conversations with folks before I even started the company. Spent a few months talking to people from my olden days, I guess you would say. I'm not that old, but I'll call it the olden days. And it just started becoming very, very clear to me that the opportunity was there. And there's one really significant component to the decision to build this company that made it why I said I don't see a reason not to do this. And it was specifically related to the vertical ERP systems that are available in the market, because everybody, VCs, other people would say, oh, there's all these AR management tools, there's all these AP management tools, there's all these embedded finance tools. We don't need another one. And I said, except that not one of those integrates with those. And I never figured out, like the lumber, building materials, construction supply, construction industry is one of the biggest industries in the United States. It's something like $2 trillion if you include construction and the supply of construction. Why are people not doing this? And there's a couple of reasons why. I think that, first of all, there's dominant ERP players, long time, very successful dominant ERP players. There's effectively two of them that own the whole market. They do a very, very good job at certain things, particularly the way they handle commodity inventory management and unique nuances related to e-commerce. And there's some stuff that's really, really specific to the industry. But they weren't designed as open connectivity systems. And in many cases, they didn't have open connectivity. So it became a challenge, which I like, to say the opportunity to get into this market is to solve one of these problems first. How do we get our system integrated with something that is very difficult, or even in the words of other people, not possible to do? And we were I'm fortunate that I have an amazing technical team, my CTO, Doug, and my head of product, Aaron, who both worked with me at C2FO, which is something that you'll probably see from us in the future going forward. And they were, because I didn't have anything to do with the solution, they were able to come up with unbelievable solutions, and we walked out of it in a matter of it took us a while. Like if we're thinking about the sort of pains and stuff like that as we were going through the process, it wasn't easy. I figured if it was easy, somebody would have figured it out already. But we did, and we spent a long time perfecting the product. I'm also completely opposed to MVPs. I'm going to say that on a product podcast. I am completely opposed to MVPs, mostly because I have a definition of viable that disagrees with other people. Viable to me means fully functional, not like duct tape and baling wire together and it kind of sort of works, but it only does one of the 10 things you told them that it did. We were not going to do that. So we built what I would describe as enterprise software as the V1, and integrated it with with these systems, and allowed this bolt-on payment and AR management experience to be connected to these systems that nobody has ever had the option to do this before. At least the people that we are running into or talking into are just thinking, oh my gosh, everything's paper, everything's manual. We mail our statements, we print our invoices. I mean, I had my alpha customers spend something like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in printing and mailing invoices. I mean, it's the way that it was when I was at Do It Best in 2007. That's exactly like that was the time when they were transitioning away from like, and they were probably slow to that process also. But by 2010, there was like they were charging for people to pay with checks. Like you use the online AR system, or we charged you for you to mail us a check. But this largely did not happen when you went down to the customer, to the store, to the member level. They didn't make that jump, probably because they didn't have the resources to build it themselves. They wouldn't have known what to build if they attempted to build it themselves. There weren't off-the-shelf tech products that they could bolt on and have, a solution. And these ERP systems, frankly, are so important to the way they run their business that moving to a tech-forward system, there's obviously numerous of them. Moving to a NetSuite or a QuickBooks or an Acumatica or Microsoft Dynamics or any of those was not really an option. So these siloed vertical ERPs were our opportunity to offer these customers what I would consider flashy, modern, bolt-on solutions to their incredibly important tactical ERP system. And in our view, it turned, if you looked at it as a holistic thing, the existing installed operating ERP system with our bolt-on to it, does it make people think of it as an entirely new experience? Like, does it make people think of the entire experience as being modernized? And like, that was our approach. And I think, obviously, we exited our pilot with our customer in October, so we're like fast-moving young company, doing everything we could possibly do. And I'm very, very pleased with what we've been able to accomplish in the time that we've been able to accomplish it. And the next stage for us is to get it into the hands of as many people who need it as possible.
You can appreciate the conversational mantra that I was talking about. I was just going to say, so correct me if I'm wrong. This is what I'm hearing you say, and I find this, I love this, and I don't say it often. You found an opportunity where no one was looking, and that opportunity was just opening accessibility for something that was previously very fortified, siloed, and that was that ERP. Is that, yeah? That's huge. And so I'm curious.
I will add to that because I think I want to be very clear about something. These ERPs are very, very good at what they do. But what they do is not this. What they do is manage the general ledger. They manage these back office functions. They manage these things that don't generally, you draw the line between like tactical and strategic. Like I view the ERP system as this tactical system that does what is absolutely needs to be done. And from that perspective, they're heavily intertwined. They're difficult. Like even if you wanted to rip one out, it would be very, very painful and uncomfortable. So generally people don't do it. And the reality is you have only one other choice that you could move to, and they're about the same as the one that you have. So they have similar features and similar everything, but they just, and so people don't often switch between them. So you find these ones that have been with this system forever, and you find customers that have been with this system forever. And the important thing from our perspective is to say, like, I would not argue that they're broken. I would argue that they're incredibly functional, and that it is just the perfect opportunity, perhaps an overdue opportunity, but all the more perfect, to see if you can what you can do to bolt on and make that experience more modern and more exciting. And using the tactical strategic analogy, I like to, and I mentioned earlier the concept of like not wanting to lay people off. Our sales pitch is not lay off all your people and we'll do it for you. Our sales pitch is I want to take the AR team that is doing all this manual work in your ERP today, and I want to make them strategic employees. I want to give them the tools to become collections specialists, to have to really drive forward strategic value, to have a goal like improving cash flow. Like there's something to be said for giving a person that has historically been um, a clerical type of employee, give somebody the overwhelmingly obvious data in front of them to show that what they're doing helps. Like the DSO is improving. Our cash conversion cycle is improving. My CFO is super duper happy now because everything's getting better. I'm very happy with my job because I can see how I'm helping everybody. Like, and we track a stat in our app that we call WADO, which is weighted average days overdue, which is a kind of a variant, a precursor to DSO. And even in our existing like post launch in October with our customer, with our design partner customer, their WADO is down 17% since October 15th. And so you can imagine the people that are the AR's team at that organization logging into the system and seeing their WADO number go down and tracking at a customer by customer basis. This one's stretching you. This one's paying faster. This one's doing things that they've never done before. We should probably reach out to this one. There's something weird is going on. Their payment cadence just changed. Like it's not rocket science yet, and it's not like we're saying we're going to apply AI and it's going to take over your life and it's going to do everything for you. That isn't the pitch, and I don't know that it ever will be for us because my approach there is very very like I want to use AI to make human beings more productive. I do not want to replace them. And the people we work with are long-time multi-generational family-owned businesses that don't lay people off. So if you can say to them, what would you rather do? Lay a bunch of people off and employ and deploy AI. And these are ultimately, I'm going to say, fairly conservative people by nature, just because of the industry they're in and the thing that they do. And so throwing something like AI at people who are mailing invoices is a that's like that's a very 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 big jump. So from our perspective, like let us do things on the back end to collect information, to consolidate information, to provide it to your clerks, to the team that you want to have access to the platform. Allow you in the beginning to make your own decisions based on the information that we give you, and then over time, the strategy is let's have let's have our customers be singularly in control about how much of the stuff they want to be automated. So I've got this vision, whether we do it or not, probably not, but I have this vision of like a slider bar that says between 0 and 100, how much automated do you want? And the company goes, well, I want to watch this and make sure, so let's do 10. And then, or whatever. And then somebody goes, wow, this is great. I want to do 80 or whatever. And probably won't do it that way, but I think it describes the way we're like thinking about it. And ultimately, the customer drives what they want, and our platform is designed to give them sort of configurations that make that it could be as automated or as little automated as they want. And I think ultimately give them the power to run it the way they want to with a tool. So this is one of my pet peeves about tech companies in general is they build a tool for somebody and then tell them what to do with it. And my sort of philosophy is here's a tool, this is what it does, like use it however you want. We're happy to tell you what we think the optimal way to do it is. We're happy to train you and do all this, but it's ultimately your decision. And so I don't know that I'll say everything, but most things that we deploy into the product, there's some configuration ability that's like, do I want to turn this on or don't I want to? Do I want to do it a little bit or do I want to do it a lot? And that's ultimately because I want these people to know that we are not there to tell them how to do their job. We are there to help them have the absolute best information possible, automate things that can be automated, give their customers a place to view, interact, download invoices where they literally can't today. Make payments by clicking the button by two mouse clicks. Creating an account and making a payment in seconds and never having to do anything. No complicated onboarding, no application, no anything. You get invited to the platform by your customer. Again, back to the configuration. The customer drives which of their customers they would like to invite to the platform, and it is entirely up to them. And then our system just handles the folks through the onboarding process and gives them the access to the tool. And if they need support and help and guidance, that we are there for that. What we have found gives some very significant kudos to the team is the app in its state today. We have very little questions about how it works and what the customers are supposed to do, and I'm very proud of our team being able to accomplish that. Because you think about, there's no instructions really. It's just an intuitive system that's like click, 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 done.
And I bet that I was just going to say, I bet it really helps, given that your one hemisphere was actually on the other end of this, right? And so you speak their language, but you just don't speak their language. You understand their mannerisms. You understand the nuances to a depth that I think really translates into how you're describing the UI UX. Before we get into that, and thanks for walking us through dry powder, because I'm very curious. I'm very curious, particularly about that. The discoveries and the conversations you had, and that ties back to your notion of MVP. And so I'll get into that in just a moment. But real quick, I just couldn't shake this question off my mind. The space has two existing incumbent ERPs. They're brilliant at what they do when it comes to the tactical piece, but this AR piece is just a nightmare in the experience of how you use it. And so I guess implicit in you building a solution that bolts on, I was going to ask, how likely is that there's a new ERP system that comes around and sort of just comes up with a new and better version of this in the space?
So it's always possible, and any large-scale ERP system that has an awful lot of money could make the decision to enter the space. But I'll go back to the one point that I made. These are heavily, heavily integrated systems. They are very complex to tear out and put something else in. And I will say, these are generally not companies that have IT departments. And even if you're talking at hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, they might have a small IT department or an IT person. But going through a technical implementation of a new ERP system, which we all know will take 6 to 28 months, and cost way more than they said it was going to. If you're talking about the sort of big tech installations, they're already installed. It already works. And so I think from the perspective, the most likely scenario is that the existing players modernize themselves. And as you can imagine, I know both of these players pretty well. And right now we're in a place where we are a fully open and accepted connectivity partner to the one primary system that we are live with today. The second one, we haven't begun the connection yet because we have so much interest from just that one already. But ultimately, we'll have both, and then essentially anybody in the industry would be able to sign up and turn it on. But I think it really comes down to the fact that these are. It takes a lot for these businesses to be willing to commit to that amount of work to move to something brand new, which means they have to train all of their people on something else. They have to take all of the time away from everything that they would otherwise be doing to spend entirely on a new tech implementation. And I think that has scared away bigger players joining the market. Now, I suppose another option would be an even bigger player acquiring one of these systems as their way into the market. But I still don't think they would replace it. I think they would acquire it to get the system and then start doing like what we're doing and like surrounding it with things that can be selected off a menu and deployed very, very easily. And I think I would argue one of the most exciting things about our existing implementation, uh, zero technical resources, and you can be processing in 48 hours or less. Uh, we do the integration is done on our side, which of course has already been done. We can plug into our integration point without the customer doing anything. They hand the endpoint details to us. We connect to it, and it is from a technical integration perspective, it is done. Um, the In fact, that can be done in as little as like an hour. But the long pole in the tent of our install is the very simple component of obtaining a merchant ID number from our merchant processor, which takes a couple days. So we can be technically moving invoice data back and forth. We could be testing in Sandbox so that you people can practice and get to know the system literally the day that we start it. And then you could be in production, inviting your first customers, doing live payments as soon as you get the merchant ID number.
I like that. I like that. That's very cool. So, if I'm understanding this right, not only are you finding an opportunity that was kind of overlooked for all this time, but it's also the solution you're presenting is also very sort of, I mean, open source might not be the right term, but very open box or out of the box, where it doesn't really matter. Both ERP systems, I mean, in theory, you're able to plug and play. And so, in effect, you're almost de incentivizing the need or the investment that goes in from these ERPs to make it, for them to do this themselves because, well, dry powder already exists and they're doing a great job. That's kind of cool.
Like I'll add to that because I think that's a great point. Like our presumption and hope and goal and all these things is that they ultimately look at us as like a valued partner that makes their customers stickier, that makes them like them even more. And maybe if they realize that we are not a threat to them in any way, which of course we're not building a full stack ERP system and trying to sell against these billion-dollar companies on our own. And so I think that the best outcome for us is a friendly relationship where maybe we co-develop features together. Maybe they give us some special connectivity over time because their customers are asking for it. And I think that's the most logical place for us to be. And then if you think well into the future, the product is not actually specifically designed with any specifics towards lumber and building materials. It is entirely repurposable for anybody that does credit and collections and AR management. So it could be general distributors. It could be wholesale manufacturers, anybody that sells generally B2B, although it doesn't have to be, generally B2B on payment terms, and therefore you have an accounts receivable problem that you need to manage. You could turn on dry powder, and of course we do have a no integration version, which I think is just a nice thing to have in your back pocket. So if somebody has um, an AR problem and they don't run one of these ERP systems where we have an integration, we have a very simple file upload structure that allows people to essentially load the data into the system using standard reports from the ERP system. Every ERP system has like an open invoice report. Every ERP system has account details report. And so we have the ability for people to come in and we tell them like, hey, have one of your employees come in at, they sit at their desk at 8 o'clock in the morning. They have a calendar reminder that says upload the day's files to dry powder. And from that moment forward, it works exactly the same way as if it was integrated. And so somebody that has nothing to do with the industry, and of course we run into these people all the time, that they're like, man, I really wish I could use this, but I'm not in lumber. I'm like, doesn't matter. You could turn this on even though that you use NetSuite or QuickBooks or whatever. And we have prospects actively that use both. And said, in the short term, you can upload the standard outputs from QuickBooks or from NetSuite or whatever system. We can parse the data into the right place so that it's very little effort on your side. And then as we grow forward and prioritize additional connectivity based on the systems that we run into outside of these first couple in the lumber and building materials space, once we get a connector, we just offer it to them.
Yeah, that's very cool. I actually was under the assumption that this was, the niche here was more so the construction space. But like you mentioned, AR is a functional piece, irrelevant of what the industry is. And therefore, you're solving a problem that I think translates across. One question I have for you during your discovery. Construction supply distributors and companies, I mean, they're notoriously conservative. And so I'm curious that when you had these conversations ahead of this time, and this also starts to lead into how you were defining your MVP, right? For you, your definition of viable is very, very different, which I'd wager that all these discovery calls or these initial sort of pain point conversations really just help you have a rock solid product to start off with. So it doesn't really surprise me that your MVP is a different definition and you've got that enterprise. I'm curious of what was changing in the market that made AR automation like the right time. Like what was said? What did you hear that really was like, yeah, this is the time to do this? Because it could have been anything else, right?
So, great question, and it's going to tie back right to what we talked about earlier. I think there's an awful lot of people in the world, particularly in lumber, building materials, and construction, that are worried. Full stop. They are worried about the economy. They are worried about the housing market. They are worried about tariffs. They're worried about, I mean, specifically lumber. Like lumber tariffs was one of the products that was yanked around. Yes, we have a tariff. No, we don't. Now it's big. Now it's small. No, we don't. Yes, we do. And because the overwhelming majority of lumber sold in the U.S. comes from Canada, and so you can imagine that became a very very big concern. It caused massive sort of fluctuations and spikes and drops in the futures market because nobody really knew what was going to happen. And so what my belief, and I've had conversations about many folks with many folks about this, my belief is that people are starting to see or be afraid, or maybe afraid's too strong, concerned that 0809 is going to happen again. And I didn't, and then they look at their own business and they say, what did I do since then to prevent what happened to us last time? And then they go, not much. Because the reality, as somebody who lived that, the reality is that, and nobody can be blamed for this. This isn't a wrong thing or a bad thing, but your family-owned business nearly goes out of business, and you make it through the crisis, and you take a deep breath, and you take your family on vacation, and then you go, we're back to normal, and that's where it stayed. Like we're back to normal. We're healthy again. The business is doing fine. People are happy. I can sleep at night because I'm not worried that I'm going to go out of business. But not everybody went to the point of saying, but what do we do about it to make it sure that it didn't happen again? And the second thing on top of that, which might be even more important, and this is true in lots of industries, and I'm going to say the word unfortunately, um, multi-generational family-owned businesses. There is for the first time in generations, the youngest generation might not want to work there. And so instead of the daughter going and getting the accounting degree and becoming the controller and then eventually the CFO, or the son getting the marketing degree and then becoming the head of marketing or whatever, all of the above, um, which ultimately means that they were trained by the people already doing it at the time. And you know that when you're trained by the people already doing it, you're told how they learned how to do it 10 years ago and not necessarily what you need to do going forward. Again, nothing wrong with that. That's human nature. You can't teach somebody something that you don't know yourself. And so I think that we're in this transition period where there's an awful lot of these family-owned businesses saying, yeah, we probably need an outside CFO. We need somebody that can come in from the outside and has experience modernizing systems and has experience, doing solving problems in the finance space, um, and bringing an outside perspective in and saying, yeah, why in the world are we doing that? Like, we shouldn't be doing that. We should do this. And have you guys ever tried using XYZ tool? And these people come in with the perspective of modernization as the goal. Instead of just keep it on the rails, it's modernization becomes the goal. And so I think those two things lining up together at the right time. I mean, I genuinely hate that fear of problems is a significant motivator for people, because I'd rather that they were not afraid that something was going to happen to their business, but that's just the reality. And So if a combination of fear and or concern and or general uncertainty and bringing in outside people that have done this at other companies and other industries, I think that all paints a picture that is, I mean, like I've talked to so many CFOs that have never been in the lumber space in the last, year, that would say, I had no idea. I had no idea that none of this exists. I didn't even know that we were collecting 100% of our invoices with checks. I didn't know. And 100% of invoices in checks is a story that I hear regularly. Um, and so it's like when a CFO comes in and the first thing that they decide to do is to set up a lockbox because they get so many checks in the mail, then you're like, that's something that's like old. Like setting up a check lockbox is that's 2000. And so I look at this from the perspective of saying there's a lot of these businesses that are getting caught up and we can help them get caught up, but we can also be the engine that takes them forward from the status quo. And the fact that we can do both with the same product, and a combination of features and functionalities that we will eventually release over time, plus obviously what we already have live. Um, I think we're in a unique position to be seen as somebody that um, genuinely cares about the impact that we have on their business, and as a result, um, maybe it's a little cliche, but um, I like to have an organization and a company and the team and the people on the team to be seen as consultants more than salespeople. If you need something and we have it, we'll sell it to you. But we're not going to call you because we need $50,000 in revenue.
Yeah, I was gonna say that in this conversation that we've had, I've picked up on a few subtle sort of values that are consistent. Care for humans, naturally compassion. There's empowerment, right? There's the empowerment of we don't want to come and tell you how to do it or remove processes you don't need or people that you don't need. It's about how do you do better, faster, quicker, but how do you do it? And to me, I hear a lot of that, and I'm very moved, and I hear your passion for dry powder as well. I mean, going from walking us through it in bits and pieces throughout this conversation, but I think it paints a very holistic view of the journey from the very beginning, your discovery calls, right, to understand what really the pain points are, to then taking the time to build out this MVP that's very, very robust, that today you're not even getting questions on how to use this, from having tangible metrics like the Wado you shared, right? Dropping it down by 17%. I'm not surprised to see that you're getting this traction. And so to me, I think I'm really excited to see where dry powder goes. And if I was to sort of now get look a little more introspectively within dry powder, I'm kind of curious. Twofold question. One, what kind of metrics, customer signals are you sort of looking into as a way of that you're tracking, that you're measuring? Answer that one first, then we'll come to the second one.
Um, so one of the things that we're tracking a lot right now, and actually in the process of putting together sort of an internal dashboard so that we can more actively monitor it. Um, because we do not force the customer to do certain things, because we do not make them do certain things, like one mentioned it earlier, the concept of inviting your customers to the platform is driven singularly by our customer. So whether it's the CFO or the AR manager, or whoever it is on their side that decides, it doesn't matter to us. Whoever it is on their side that decides who is eligible for the platform, and it could be everybody. And if the answer is everybody, we do have a bulk invite everybody option. But generally, like in our app right now today, you can go customer by customer, and you could sort them by number, by name, by all kinds of stuff, and you can invite them in bulk or individually, like one at a time, or like I said, in bulk. But the reason why I make that, I mean, we processed $5 million in payments for the one customer since October 15th. Which of course is very, very exciting for us. And that number is obviously going like this. They have invited less than 20% of their customers. And so you can imagine that from our perspective, um, in terms of things that I want to have as metrics that we monitor and stuff like that, monitoring invites relative to the total customers in the system, registration related to invites. Our registration rate is very high, but we are not in a position right now where we actually have anything pushing registration. We're not actively going, register, please register, come on, please. We're not pinging people with emails every day saying register, register, register. We're letting the customer drive that however they want. And like a specific example, they included in their last physical mailing of their invoices to customers, a letter from the CFO saying, we have this new thing, please sign up or go to this, here's the URL link and request access to the system if you haven't already been invited. And they got like 400 requests in like a week. And so, and as you add more customers and you get bigger in scale, the individual nuances of one customer to the next customer, who they invite, how many they invite, is less important. It's still very, very important, but it's less important than the overall number. And I would rather have the customers know that they have the absolute control over who, what, when, where, why they invite them. So I'd say that's probably something that's on my mind. But I wouldn't say that's mission critical for us at the moment. We're moving enough money and onboarding customers daily, which of course we don't have to do anything. That's all done by the platform. That's an optimization that we will handle at some point in the near future as we have the additional resources to do more than what we're already doing. And because we are a small team and a young company, and the best possible outcome or the best possible situation for us over the next 6 to 12 months, and certainly our goal is to expand the team, expand the feature set and functionality, specifically from a product development engineering perspective, and get it in the hands of more people so that we can gather more direct customer insight, a very, very customer-focused product approach. I mean, Aaron, my head of product, would sit in their office in Wisconsin and just watch what they did. Like, why did you have to go from that screen to that screen? Why did you have to copy this and then put it over here? Why did you screen scrape this website and paste it into Google Sheets? Like all of these things, and then you come back and be like, well, we could do that, we could do that, we could do that, and that's just ultimately that we can't solve the problems that we don't know are problems. And one of the things that I've learned in my limited time in tech, I suppose, I guess it's been 12 years now. Don't guess what your customers want. Don't build it and then shove it in their face. Like, let them tell you what they want. Like, it's a completely different perspective. It changes the dynamics of the conversation. It changes the dynamics of the relationship. And a number of times that I've seen, and frankly done myself, rolling out of products and then find out that the customers are like, yeah, that's cool, but I don't need it. Like, oh man, we picked the wrong thing. And so one of my big learnings personally was it's not for us to choose. It's for us to choose what we prioritize. It's for us to choose the order in which we build it or what we build and what we don't build. But it's not for us to choose what goes on the list of options. That is for the people who are using the platform to tell us what they need and what would help them the most. Going back to the very, very first question that I asked my guy who eventually became my alpha customer, what is the thing you'd pay the most money to fix? And it wasn't because I wanted their money. It was because it told me the thing that hurts the most.
Right. That's very cool. I like that framing of the question. I might actually take that on myself. I was going to say, you mentioned something there. You mentioned you don't realize what problems are until you sort of uncover them, right? And so I recognize you mentioning a little bit about your sales cycle or your sales strategy with getting the customers. It's more so the customers that have the full autonomy there, and that's a bit of a pivot that you'll sort of think about, in the future. Question for you. naturally get your journey into dry powder. I think it's no business has smooth sailing. I mean, I wish every business did. There's always growing pains that come through, learning curves you got to be able to climb. I'm curious today if you were to look into your operations, anywhere from product adoption, development, sales to anything in between. Where are you finding the most bottlenecks today?
I actually think that's pretty simple. And I get the feedback from investors a lot. It is the opportunity definitely exists. There is a hole in the market that absolutely needs to be filled. But there's an awful lot of people out there that will ask themselves the question, if they've been able to be successful for this long without it, what makes you think they're going to buy it now? And my so the challenge, and frankly, we've been turned down by investors for that reason. And I turn back to them and say, well, if it was easy, it would have been done already, right? If it's the, and it always kind of curious to me that somebody would say that, because this huge opportunity exists because nobody has been able to. So there's a component of like changing the way an industry does business, and this is not a small industry. So the fact that I am very, very familiar with it and very connected to it doesn't mean that I'm like a super expert. It means that I understand the challenges. It means I know what it's like when things go bad. I've seen it. I've seen people crying because they can't pay their bills because their contractors are all going out of business. Like I've seen all that. And so the biggest challenge, which is why I think we have a bit of a, I'm gonna try to think like a bit of a groundswell type of approach to this, which is treat people show extreme care in the people you talk to and the problems that they're trying to solve. Do not push things on them that they did not ask for. Help them when they need it, and when the timing is right for them to do something, you are the one they will call. And so I'm having conversations with people that they're like, "Oh my gosh, I totally need to do this, but I have so much going on, and I don't know when I'm going to be able to, but as soon as I will let you know." And I have no doubt in my mind that in a month or 2 months or 6 months or whatever, and they take a deep breath and they realize, yeah, we should probably look into this now and see what we could do. They're going to call us. And I think that's what it's more of a groundswell type of approach. Another like a self-perpetuating network kind of thing where one customer mentions it to another customer, or even more specifically, one customer invites their thousands of customers, and then we offer it to them too. And then you have this like cross, you know, pollinating network component, um, that means that we don't need to be, and frankly, I don't know that I want to be, this super aggressive outbound tech sales organization that is trying to close deals and grab as much revenue as possible so we can go raise the next round and do it all over again. That's not the approach that is my ideal scenario. My ideal scenario is have the resources so that we can build what we need to do to and as the ball starts rolling or the snowball rolling downhill, it's just going to pick up momentum, and as a result of that, I know uh, I'm very very confident that we will be there for the people when they need it, and I think they know that.
I was just going to say that, like, as part of this, I think one thing that's really is really becoming obvious for me is there's this component of awareness and education of what dry powder is, what we do, or what you do, right? For customers to then be like, yes, I can now go to them. And it also sounds like because for the most part, they don't really know that this even exists. How do you balance the two? Right? There's the outbounding of like the sales approach, but there's also the push on, hey, this is dry powder. This is, the problem that we're solving for. How do you balance the two?
Yeah, so uh, well, as I mentioned just a little bit ago, I just got back from a regional event up in Minnesota And so we've started this approach where we go to these sort of small regional events where we can get in front of people and have more and time to ask questions and talk about their business. Literally just got back last night from one. And we've had, so I don't think certainly not at this stage of our company's life that we do the whole conference roadshow thing and go to all these huge events and spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of doing it. But I like the idea of smaller regional events. I also think that this is a very close knit community. Um, People know each other. They don't really compete with each other, which is kind of a unique thing. The lumber yard across town, like, of course they do probably technically compete with each other, but they actually would share ideas and talk about things with each other. And whether it's cross town or cross state, and maybe therefore they're not competing in any way, they go to these events and they literally sit down and be like, well, what are you doing new? What is the cool things that you're doing? What are the things that you've run into that's really really helping your business? Um, and I believe that we will be on in that conversation, and already are in many cases in that conversation. But we are, like I said, we are fully live since October 15th. So we're very very young, and know that we need to earn people's trust, and that is absolutely paramount to what we're doing. So um, that's just the direction that we go and the approach that we take everywhere. And ultimately, I believe in terms of our strategic distribution, we ultimately believe a partner distribution strategy is the way that this scales to significance in the future. And I will tell you, we have several active, interesting conversations going on right now as we speak that I can't talk about. But hopefully those, at least one of those, but potentially several of them, will come to fruition very, very soon.
Yeah, hopefully. I was going to ask, looking ahead, what does success look like over the next 6 to 12 months for dry powder?
Oh boy, that's a great question, and I should probably have an immediate answer, but I'm thinking about it. I mean, I'll start with the very tactical answer is that um, I getting to the position where we can grow the team to roll out more features fast and furious, and get the next sort of dozen or so of our customers onboarded to the platform and processing or whatever. I mean, that's probably the next shorter term than that, but get it in the hands of as many people as possible, have the resources so that we can expand the team. Because right now it is the founding team doing everything, which is great. That's no complaint. But we can service an awful lot more people, help an awful lot more businesses. Uh, we have the resources and the reach to be able to do that. So um, I would say the short answer is probably uh, the number of customers that we help, and I don't necessarily mean just our accounts receivable collection customers. I view both sides of the transaction as customers of ours. So, like, somebody that uses dry powder to pay their bills is also a customer of dry powder. They just don't have to pay us anything. So, but that's it. We have their contact information. We have invoice information about them. We can do product sort of interviews with them to figure out what kind of features and functionality they want. And ultimately, you could find out one single customer on one side can deliver 10,000 customers on the other. So I think the most important metric for us is people using it.
I love that. That's cool. I'm excited. I'm excited for what's to come. Yeah, Kevin. Look, you've been very gracious with your time. I really appreciate you taking the time here to just have a chit chat. What stands out to me is really how you're modernizing a somewhat conservative industry without the hype. And I think for listeners in fintech and B2B SaaS, this is really quite the masterclass in meeting customers where they are while still pushing the industry forward. Before we wrap up, if someone listening right now is in the construction supply space or just resonated with what you're building, what's the best way for them to learn more about dry powder or to connect with you?
Sure. Our website is drypowder.io. My email address, which is you're more than welcome to use, and I'll say it right here, kevin@drypowder.io. I'm always happy to talk to people, even just to talk about the challenges and problems and things that somebody's got ideas that could be useful for us that we could think about for future roadmap things. I'm always willing to talk about people that are either in or adjacent to the space. I'm happy to chat.
Love it. Thanks for sharing that. That brings us to the end of this episode. This podcast is sponsored by Algo AI Partners. We help fintech services companies and businesses scale using smart AI solutions. If you want to book a free consultation to find out more, just click the link in the show description. Thank you.